This is my lecture video for chapter 11. So just a quick overview, we'll be going over the types of organizational communication, informal communication, interpersonal communication, and improving employee communication skills. So in this chapter, we learned different ways employees communicate within an organization, problems in communication process, and improvements. The types of organizational communication includes upward, downward, and business communication. So for upward communication, it is communication of subordinates to superiors or of employees to managers. To minimize the number of people communicating with top executives, they use a serial communication system, meaning that if you want to send a message, that message is being sent to, or is created by the employee, and it's sent to their supervisor, and then their supervisor goes to their supervisor, and so on until it reaches the top. Okay, so some complications for upward communication. Content and tone of the message can be changed or interpreted differently, and bad news and complaints are seldom relayed. They use the minimize unpleasant message effect. So this affects the organization by keeping important information from reaching the upper levels. And then for informal communication channels, specifically in the upward communication, it is less effective and it is less affected the farther away two people are from one another. Okay, so some advantages for upward communication. They use several methods to help prevent any complications and stuff. They use the attitude survey, which is conducted annually by an outside consultant, and they use questionnaires to ask employees to rate their opinions on factors like things like pay, working conditions, and supervisors. And then they also use focus groups. Again, a consultant meets with a group of current employees for their opinions and suggestions, and all the information that they gathered from the meetings, they pass it on to management. And then they also use a suggestion box. With this, it allows employees to immediately communicate their feelings anonymously. Excuse me. And the third parties, they use a liaison or an ombudsperson who is responsible for employee complaints or concerns and suggestions, and they work with management to find solutions. Okay, for downward communication, with this type of communication, they use bulletin boards, policy manuals, newsletters, and intranets. And in this case, it's more superior to subordinate or management to employees. This also includes things that are involved in the newsletters. With this, it provides employees happy news. For example, the 3 B's, meaning babies, birthdays, and ball game scores. This type of communication is important for not only keeping employees informed, but for communicating key information needed by employees to perform their jobs more efficiently or better. So for the bulletin board for the downward communication, so the main purpose of the bulletin board is to communicate non-work related opportunities such as scholarships, optional meetings, and items for sale. They also have electronic bulletin board, also known as an in-house message networks, and it allows display of even more current information or more opportunities or items for sale, and etc. So for the policy manuals, the purpose is for posting important changes in the policy or procedures. The policy manuals contain all the rules under which employees must follow, and it is considered a binding contract by court and must be updated each time a policy is changed. So for newsletters, the purpose for newsletters is to bolster employee morale by sharing happy events. The newsletters is a good source of information for celebrating employee success, providing feedback, and providing reminders about changes in the organization. And by using this, it allows faster dissemination of info and it provides great flexibility for making changes and updates. And then for intranets, this is an organization-wide version of the internet. This is used for common resources for things like online employee handbooks, answers to FAQs, employee calendars, etc. So for business communication, this is a transmission of business-related information among employees, management, and customers. So some common methods that are used in business communication is memos, telephones, or telephone calls, emails, voicemails, and business meetings. Okay, for memos, memos were the most common in business communication. An advantage of this provides details of information to a large number of people within little time. A challenge, however, is that employees receive so much memos that they often don't read them. And then for telephone calls, they were previously appropriate for messages that did not involve that much detail. A limitation is that nonverbal cues are not available. However, we now have teleconferences that allow both parties to see and communicate with one another. And another limitation is phone calls. Phone call conversations are not documented. And then for email and voicemail, memos and telephones have been replaced now with email and voicemail. So the purpose for this is to exchange general or timely info and ask questions. An advantage to this is reducing the use and filing of paperwork and time saved by avoiding small talk with other employees. A disadvantage is the likelihood of phone tag. I think everybody has experienced phone tag before. I know I have. So the disadvantage is the likelihood of phone tag occurring, and both can reduce opportunities for personal contact. And then for business meetings, this is a common method. This common method offers several advantages over emails and memos and phone calls. However, its time demands can result in negative employee attitudes. So when it comes to business meetings, office design does play a pretty big role. So with office design, this will help employees communicate better with one another, and it will be easier to supervise and to help without physical barriers of walls. Some three common designs in the chapter that were mentioned were the freestand design, uniform design, and the freeform design. Okay, moving on to informal communication. So for informal communication, this is one of the type of organizational communication. So the information that is being shared is often transmitted through a grapevine. So I don't know, it's kind of similar to the game Telephone. So there's different types of grapevine patterns. There's a single strand grapevine, gossip grapevine, the probability grapevine, and the cluster grapevine. And so within this process of the information being shared with different individuals, there's three types of people. There's the isolates, which are employees who receive less than half the information. And then there's the liaisons that receive the most information and they do pass it on to others. And then the dead enders, they hear or they heard of the most information, but they don't pass it to others. Okay, so interpersonal communication. For interpersonal communication, this involves the exchange of the message across a communication channel from one person to another. For example, it starts by sending a memo or talking to somebody orally or verbally, and it ends with the person receiving and decoding that message. Some problems can occur. One problem is intended message versus the message sent. So some solutions to that is think about what you want to communicate, practice what you want to communicate, and learn better communication skills. A second problem is the message sent versus the message received. So choose your words carefully, in other words, because if you send a message and they don't interpret it the way you do or something like that, it can become a problem. And then the third problem is message received versus message interpreted. So it's important to learn listening skills and some different types of styles. or styles of listening is the leisure, inclusive, stylistic, technical, empathetic, and non-conforming. And then for the interpersonal communication channel, problems in communication can occur as a result of the communication channel. So the information can be communicated in different ways, and the same message can be interpreted in different ways. Other ways message can be affected are due to noise, nonverbal cues, body language, use of space, paralanguage, artifacts, and the amount of information. Okay, some reactions to communication overload. There are many ways to reduce stress, and I believe everybody has experienced this before in the past. But in the chapter, it did explain how some ways to reduce stress is the omission, error, escape, using a gatekeeper, using multiple channels, etc. Okay, moving on to improving employee communication skills. So improving employee communication skills, interpersonal communication skills. Most common method used to increase interpersonal communication skills is training workshops by a consultant. This could include improved writing. So with improved writing, just like there's no workshop for that, but the increased use of emails. So just the more you send emails, the more you improve your writing abilities. And then for written communication skills, there are two ways. One workshop could focus on improving the writer's writing skill. Another way is focusing on making materials easier to read. And then for improved writing, I'm so sorry, that was a repeat. It says increased use of email. And then for readability, providing employee with important materials to read will be effective communication form only if the employee can understand what is written. And finally, that concludes my lecture video. Thank you for your time.